So hello, my name's Eric Jonas, and I'm up here with my co-founder, Vimal Balodia, and we are from a company called Prior Knowledge. And we've built a predictive database, Veritable, that we're going to talk about today. So everyone that in this audience has probably already used, intentionally or unintentionally, a database 20 times today. They basically power every single piece of application infrastructure out there, right? And what a database is it's the key piece of technology behind the scenes that is storing, organizing, and letting you look things up in your data, right? And for this store, organize, and lookup functionality, they're an $80 billion industry. And we thought, well, if everyone's already building things on databases, what if we were to make the actual database itself a lot smarter? Right? And that's what we're launching today. Veritable is a predictive database that lets you, if you know how to talk to a database, which as many of you have actually built startups, you've built applications out there, you already know how to do this. Now you can have a database that understands your data. So instead of just looking things up, it actually tells you interesting things. In fact, it can predict missing values based on your data. But the challenge with any of these sorts of infrastructure plays here is that it's kind of hard to demo plumbing. So we built an example application here. So let's talk a little bit about online dating. Let's talk about big dating. What you're seeing on the right here is an example of the admin interface for Veritable, right? So it's showing the data as a table. And that's actually how databases store your data, in a table. It's like a giant spreadsheet that's stored behind the scenes. And for the user who's highlighted here, Big Bird, who's on the stage with us, many of the things about him are unknown because even though this is a database, many people don't actually fill out everything in their online profile. And what we can do using Veritable is start to fill in all of those missing values, right? And what you're watching right now, scroll by in the bottom, is Veritable issuing we're issuing commands to Veritable to fill in those missing values. And the way this is actually working behind the scenes is Veritable has learned about the underlying data. It's learned kind of all this complicated math. And so those commands you're seeing behind the scenes there, there are variants of the database language that all of you, or many of you, have already used, right? So many people are used to SQL or SQL, where you say, select this value, right? Please, database, give me this value. Well, we're introducing predict, right? Veritable makes it this easy to actually predict missing values. And of course, this doesn't just work for online dating, as much as I want it to help my online dating life. It also works across application domains, right? So the machine learning technology we've built lets you figure out the relationship between, say, diseases and symptoms, right? It lets you figure out the relationships between, say, your customers and the products that they're buying. It even lets you figure out the relationship between, say, people's voting habits and their survey questions and answers, right? And this gets us very, very excited because it now means that many of you don't actually have to, go out there and spend all the effort that some of the companies you saw today demoing had to spend to kind of build intelligence into your application. And, we spent a lot of time in the office thinking about kind of what are we going to get up here and say that we've disrupted, right? Because everyone's like, I'm disrupting this, I'm disrupting that. And so maybe what we're actually disrupting is databases, right? Everyone keeps talking about all these new types of database technologies, including Hadoop, but really, they're just more efficient ways of performing these sorts of lookup operations. If the database is suddenly smarter, every one of you out there right now who's built an application on one of these suddenly has these new capabilities of filling in the data, of understanding those relationships. And maybe that's what we're really disrupting. Maybe what we're really disrupting is data science, right? Many of you are in this regime right now where, you know that there are these data science people out there. Maybe you want to hire them to solve a data problem you have. Because you yourself just have these hacking skills and this domain expertise. But we'd really like to give you the capability of doing these sorts of things without having to understand all the math that we suffered through way too many years at MIT to learn. And maybe that's really what we're disrupting, right? At the end of the day, maybe we're disrupting math, right? We've built state-of-the-art non-parametric Bayesian statistics powered by Markov chain Monte Carlos so that no one in this audience ever has to worry about what those words mean ever again, right? Thank God. Right? We joke that maybe we're the no math company, right? Because we know math, and so there's no math left in your life, right? And so we go back and forth, maybe we're disrupting this, we're disrupting that, we're disrupting blank, and then we realize we're really disrupting blanks. And, something that was pointed out to us earlier is, well, how is disrupting blanks helpful? Well, there's a lot of blanks and a lot of applications out there that we could fill in. We can tell you, in fact, Veritable will quite happily tell you whether or not Sarah will get the flu. And when Veritable tells you this answer, it gives you back a confidence interval, right? It says, hey, look, this is how confident I am in this answer. So Veritable can tell you how much Joe is going to spend this year. We can figure out how many Snuggies that you're going to buy, that someone will buy this week, right? We can even tell you when your car is going to arrive or more. So you can build the application now that tells you when the car is going to arrive. In fact, we can even tell you what you should listen to, maybe, right? So the goal here is being able to let everyone in the audience actually build this class of application. And what we really think going forward is that if you can use SQL, you can use Veritable, right? So every database user out there should be able to use Veritable. We're launching it today. I mean, we actually launched it yesterday because this is kind of the same presentation from the previous day. And we're hoping that everyone's able to go out there and use it. And we did a little bit of research, and we found that, for example, there are 2,500 employees at Yahoo who know SQL, right? And there are over 100 employees at Yammer who know SQL. Thank you, LinkedIn, for having all this data. And so what we're hoping in the long run is that we see this pattern over and over again where you have a hard problem in a simple interface, and it turns into a very valuable and transformative technology. And it hasn't escaped our notice that there's this company out there called Oracle. And even though they're worth $150 billion and are called Oracle, their products only tell you what you already know. We think the future can be a lot smarter than that. Thank you.
So I guess one question, I could definitely see it being useful. I wonder why you chose to architect it as a database as opposed to maybe a service on top of the database, because it seems like you could do the same thing, and developers tend to be very, have strong feelings about almost religious about which databases they use, and they don't switch very often, and there's lots of sysadmins and support type people who know how to tune them and that kind of thing. So. Right,
exactly. So right now, Veritable is actually a database that you might install alongside your existing database. Okay. We certainly have some users who are using it as their primary store, but the way many people use, say, data warehousing solutions or reporting solutions, this can be juxtaposed with your existing infrastructure. Our real goal is kind of making that adoption curve or that adoption cost kind of as easy as possible.
Kyle. I'm going to ask quickly while you guys think of more questions. Is anyone an investor in this company? All right, cool. Now ask questions.
Who do you see as your first set of customers, I think?
So go ahead.
Well, right now what we're doing is we're really trying to focus on reaching out to individual developers, right? And those developers could be in large organizations, or those developers could be, you guys out there launching your startups, but anybody who really has this predictive need, because they're the ones that are really going to be able to adopt a new technology like this and demonstrate the value. From there, we can focus on trying to help larger organizations adopt this internally.
We look to existing success stories ranging from Salesforce to Box to GitHub to even Yammer to see kind of the modern way that many organizations actually grow into the enterprise. But really, especially when it comes to kind of de-risking the interface, right? We think kind of targeting everyone here is actually the right step for us right now.
So are there particular industries, developers that work, whether it be finance or travel, where there's a lot of data and you have developers working there, that where your solution sort of lends itself to?
Well, so one of the things that we've really found, everyone who's really excited about kind of data right now is starting getting their data house in order, right? So data is a lot cleaner than it used to be. And one of the places we've seen a lot of early adoption is in the sorts of industries where they've kind of been paying attention to their data infrastructure for a little bit. That said, we have developers building things ranging from kind of lead scoring to credit scoring to figuring out customer purchase value to even online dating on top of Veritable today.
How much professional services is required? Because at least in my experience building machine learning algorithms, a lot of people don't understand. At PayPal, where David and I work together, at the end of the day, it's a risk management company, and every single transaction on PayPal gets scored to figure out whether it's fraudulent or not. So we implemented a lot of these a long time ago. And in my experience doing that, it requires a lot of insight and understanding into your business and your business processes. It's a very iterative process. You don't just get the data and you run the algorithms and suddenly you have a result. It actually requires a lot of back and forth and cleansing, and there's a lot of hard thinking. So you present a vision that sounds like it's a service, but my intuition is it requires a lot of people.
Well, so I think you're right in that it does require a lot of people. But the thing is that it doesn't require our people, right? If you think about the people in these organizations right now who best understand their data, right, a lot of them are the business analysts who are actually asking these questions. Many of them actually know SQL, right? I'm not getting up here and saying that in some sense this is going to solve every data problem ever. If it did, we would have kind of already sold it to finance and would be rich and not here today, right? But there do exist lots of people out there who they know how to talk to their database. And part of why we're trying to take kind of this powerful machine learning technology we've developed and package it behind that layer is that's served as kind of this very nice kind of layer of adoption, right? Or kind of abstraction boundary beyond which people have kind of built against for a long time. So it's entirely true that, for example, there might be a good industry in having organizations like, say, Accenture go out there and help people build solutions with Veritable. But the fact that we have 500 users today kind of trying out and building things on top of the platform suggests that there do at least exist some people out there who are capable of using this, right? I mean, again, we kind of looked at GitHub where you target the sophisticated people first, and as you kind of round off those edges, you can move a bit higher up the value chain. What
do you think you can charge for this? Because sort of my impression, at least, is anyone who's got a computer science degree can do some very basic machine learning training and probably get up to speed good enough. And as long as they have the data, I mean, the truth is that the choice of model matters a lot less than who has the best data. So if I have the data, and you're going to charge me $100,000, I might be better off sending one of my engineers off for training.
I disagree about the the model doesn't really matter component, but and that's certainly something we've seen in a lot of our customers where simply throwing what they have into, say, linear regression doesn't necessarily give them terribly good results. And in fact, many of our early users are actually people with CS degrees who are they're like, I took this machine learning class, or I signed up for this machine learning class in Stanford. Now I understand what's possible, but God, I don't actually want to be using it. That said, one of our challenges is that the value that people are going to get from Veritable is going to vary potentially tremendously across various different verticals, right? And so we're still trying to figure out exactly the right way of basically letting everyone with an exciting application build something really fantastic, but at the same time helping monetize that. A great data point there is generally people with more data, it tends to be more valuable to them. So taking a page from Splunk's book, for example, letting the, in some sense, cost grow with the data volume seems fairly reasonable. But again, we've had this out there for 6 weeks now, so we're still trying to figure that out.
Marissa, what are your thoughts? I know you have a CS background. Is something Google may have been interested in, or Yahoo now? Or
a lot of my questions were asked by Roelof, but I was going to ask how big your databases really need to be in order to actually get the accuracy to a particular level. Because the question is, are you going off of business intelligence that's in the company, or are you actually just training off of the values that are seen in other entries in the same database? And
right.
What kind of accuracy levels do you see when you do the training?
So, the important thing about putting something like this in the hands of normal people is that you have to be able to tell them when you don't know, right? And so the actual sort of accuracy you're capable to get from any machine learning method, but especially from Veritable, depends on, in some sense, how much interesting structure there is in your data. So we have people doing lead scoring or credit scoring with only 10,000 or 100,000 rows, which certainly, that fits in your Excel spreadsheet, right? We have other people who are trying to do various bits of ad targeting where they have, orders of magnitude more data than that. And it really ends up depending, right? The way a lot of this was built from the outset was to using a set of machine learning techniques that model how humans learn from data, and we're actually very good at learning from sparse, heterogeneous, complicated, nonlinear data. And so we've not, the most exciting applications we see actually are in this medium data regime where maybe just throwing the entire thing into Hadoop isn't actually going to work for them, and what they really need is something that's using more state-of-the-art methods behind the scenes to pick out that signal.
What are your backgrounds? How did you come up with the idea?
Well, we spent way too much time at MIT studying a lot of this stuff. Some of this came out from Eric and Bo's thesis research at MIT, and all of us are hard engineering and hard science and hard CS backgrounds. So this is something that effectively lets us do interesting data science and takes all the intelligence that we have, it packages it into a tool that other people who haven't spent the same number of years learning this particular vertical suffer.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, bitter grad student up here.
Yes, who haven't suffered through the same number of years of education actually become productive with this class of problems.
I guess this is more feedback than a question, but I think so everyone I know it seems like everyone's looking for data scientists. So yeah, to the extent you can package up your expertise and sell it, that's a good idea. I think though, the challenge I see is that in the high end at least, let's take finance as an example, that a lot of people's jobs is precisely to create these models to predict let's say the stock price or something. And that's sort of where their competitive advantage comes from. And it would be very hard for them to sort of whether rationally or not, to sort of outsource that to a packaged product.
So there's two answers to that. One is yes. In fact, in finance, we have many friends with PhDs like us who are out there pulling down, $500K a year building models in quantitative finance. Fortunately, most people that we're talking to can't afford those people, right? And even if you're in an organization where if you're in an organization where this is like 100% of your value add, then maybe it is something you want to build in-house. But even though Google went out there and built, say, GFS and their existing MapReduce infrastructure, they still have, for example, a lot of relational databases. Right? In some sense, when we've started talking to some kind of larger enterprise customers as well, even though they have often great data scientists on staff, they might be tackling kind of the single highest value problem they have right now. But there's almost always more work to be done.
I guess that's the question to me: is how big is that that sort of middle of the spectrum where pretty good is good enough?
Right, and I mean the way we think about that is in some sense for a lot of people right now. There are different flavors of databases that they're using, right? Vertica looks very different. The Vertica use base looks very different from Oracle, looks very different from MySQL. And so as we kind of think about how this ecosystem breaks down, that's part of what we're trying to figure out, right? That said, the people we've seen kind of most excited about having this sort of capability are actually a lot of the people in this audience, right? Because they're certainly not going to go out and hire, a PhD data scientist, and they're also not going to go out and pay, Oracle or SAP or McKinsey to come in and solve those problems for them.
Any other questions? All right, that was Prior Knowledge.
Fantastic.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.